Hello and welcome to Eudoxia Mysteries. There have been a lot of videos about cults, and it is always interesting to discuss this stuff. Cults are generally always related to religion in one way or another. It can be practical things for the spirit or religion, as well as rituals. A cult has three characteristics: a cult object, members that practice within the cult, as well as one or multiple cult-related rituals. Obviously, cults, as we have seen prior within videos or Reddit threads, can end up being a place for people to get exploited and abused. Especially people without any hope in life and/or people that are very naive are easy targets for cult leaders to take advantage of. This doesn't mean that every cult is like this, but there have been quite a few examples in the past where this was the case. To give you an example, there was a cult with the name Aim Shinrikyo. Once inside the cult, you needed to prepare an Armageddon to start a third world war by destabilizing Japan. If you started realizing that the cult is nothing for you, you were either forced to remain in the cult or you were. That said cult was even responsible for the biggest in Japan. With that introduction out of the way, let's dive into this video's main topic. I stumbled across a very interesting thread on the RBI subreddit. Want to find other people who came from the place I did. It's so hard to fully understand what he's trying to tell us here because the grammar is kinda strange and he has quite a few typos. Syntax decisions are also not always fully comprehensible. I'll read out the original post, but I will then try to give you guys a more comprehensible summary with additional information of it. I'm not good at remembering things from so long ago, but I'm going to try. I grew up in rural Alabama. Our place was a bigger house that more so looked like a barn with a bunch of rooms put to it. The place was past a forest and near a big cliff, and that's all I remember for the location. I don't think we had an address, but I wouldn't have paid enough attention to see one. We wasn't near any other people for probably a couple miles. Everything was run down and falling apart. There was barely electricity and only water sometimes, but even that wasn't much. Very low money area. What I always known was that there was other places like ours, and I knew of the 2nd, 1st, 11th, 9th, and mine, which was 6. Arlen South, didn't know if there was others in Alabama, but I knew 2 of them was in Virginia and Louisiana. They had a name that sounded like Lagoon, but not quite. We weren't allowed to leave. Absolute backwards people. The other places, though, I heard had worse because they had obsession with angels and the devil. Ours not as much. There was around 30 adults and kids and a little less. The kids was mean as hell to each other and all the grown-ups did was screw. I knew words to speak but didn't know what they meant in reading and I couldn't write worth shit. We had to use wet paper to scrub our teeth clean. The girls used old towels when they were bleeding, but some just let themselves bleed. I only had 2 shirts and 1 pair of shorts and nobody ever got their clothes clean. I didn't even know my middle or last name, day I was born. We got food every few days, but I always had something wrong with it. That's just a few things of what it was like for us. I left 75 when I was 12. I went with my best friend and another girl who wanted to leave too. And another kid I picked up, the message from was supposed to come too, but he disappeared from behind us. I went to Virginia to find the 11th one because I'd been there before. What made me do this is because I learned I had a brother who died alone in one of them when he was 12. He was disabled and they hurt him. They took his mother from him because they thought he was born with horns. I want to find others like me so I can know more about where we came from and what it was like. Maybe even find the ones I knew if they still here. The only good lead I got is that the one in Virginia was from Sperryville. It was hidden off but there was a mark in a tree. When I got there was nothing left. I don't know what the place looked like now or if it even is there anymore. I'm not good with this stuff, sorry, this is all messy. My wife used this site before and said it's good at helping. Thanks for anything. Y'all help me find the place it might be and what to look if it isn't. But I still don't know what else to go on to find the others and the other places. I don't know where to start. Basically, he grew up in Alabama and he was living in a house isolated from other people. The place had the name Lagoon or something similar attached to it. They barely had any money, electricity, and the house itself was falling apart. He knew of other places that were similar to his. There were 11 or more locations in at least 3 states: Alabama, Virginia, Louisiana. The place was founded by a woman. The place did not appear to have any strict system of rules or stratification. He lacked basic skills like reading and writing and didn't even know his own name. Most of the children there had biblical names. He escaped from there at the age of 12 when he knew that they abused his brother and he in the process of it. He specifically talks about a place in Sperryville, Virginia. He also talks about demons and angels and how the people there assumed that his brother was born with horns or something. He wants to find people that he left behind. When he went back in 1975, the buildings were empty and no one was there. Obviously this threat left a lot of questions open, but OP actually answered nearly every comment on the thread. He talks about how the kids there didn't have parents, the religious belief was more of an obsession, and made the impression that the people there were insane. And they even threatened the kids there if the children wanted to go to the forest where the angels are. Now, angels seems to be a code word here. Angels could also mean intruders or something along these lines. Just keep this in mind for now, this will become relevant later. He continues, the men were violent, you would get beaten up if you didn't listen to them. He also says, was all the time, everybody and kids, even I started too early. OP also mentions quite a lot that he cannot express himself with regard to how he feels like. After people gave the advice that he should seek a therapist, he would say, it didn't feel so bad, I really think I'm okay. Which makes sense, since he also said that his place specifically, compared to the other similar places, was not as strict, and he probably never knew of another life besides the one he was living at that time. OP is also in a complicated situation regarding his belief. I want to believe God loved my sons and never give them pain no matter who they love or are. I want to know he's a good man. He also mentions that he never thought of his place like a cult, even though it makes a lot of sense that it is one. But we get some sort of clarification in the next reply. Reading your descriptions makes me wonder if this was more of a homeless camp than a cult. Especially the mention of talk of other such places and markers left in trees to find the location. Which he then replies with, definitely seems so. He goes in more detail. Yes, I really think it was more of being homeless and real off than cold now. I really think about it. There was some shared mental problem with religion, but it wasn't so organized to be like that. Maybe belief just spread and made things bad. I wish things could have been better, and I want to be an assurance to anyone left that God isn't cruel like that. So his explanations prior, that you could not go to the forest where the angels are, could be understood in the sense of intruders being there. So angels as a code word for intruders, which obviously the kids back then didn't know. And further, there were symbols in trees such as, for instance, of a crane fly, which is a sign that there is a homeless shelter nearby. Later on, he replied to someone by saying, I do know there being some nasty shit they put through their arms. Everyone got it at least once in there. I was made to take it a couple of times, and sometime later couldn't feel some parts of my face and arms and legs. To clarify, are you saying that they injected drugs into themselves and a couple of times into you? Yes. So OP could have been in a homeless shelter with addicts. And if OP took it a couple of times, it could have changed the way he perceived things back then, especially as a child. There were also comments about where he could have been after he escaped from the place. Locations near the supposed cult, but nothing really regarding the cult. Lagoon Park was a name that was thrown around in the comment section, and OP also agreed that it was familiar to him. Obviously, there is the possibility of this being a hoax. There is no real proof of anything to this claim, but some things are just kind of suspicious. The syntax, the grammar, the thread, and his replies. It makes the impression that he just pretends to be someone from the South. He just pretends to write like an uneducated person. It's like he's trying too hard to make it authentic. That was like the main claim of a lot of people that doubted this being real. But honestly, other than this, there is no real way of telling if this entire thing is a hoax or not. OP responded to most of the comments with a lot of details. The information that he was putting out didn't contradict each other, and he even said that it is indeed not even a cult, or that he doesn't think of it as a cult. If he really wanted to milk the story, he could have pretended that it could be, or that it is a cult. But instead, he kind of refused the idea of it being a cult and further made it more authentic by confirming that it could be a homeless shelter. This entire thing could very well be true at the current time, but it could be debunked in the future. With the current information that we have, it seems likely that OP is telling the truth and that he was in a homeless shelter where cult characteristics were present, but further, especially at a very young age, were also aspects of that group. It's honestly a fascinating and interesting thread, whether it is real or not. Feel free to discuss this topic a bit further. I put the link to the thread in the description. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a rating and subscribing to the channel. I upload every Monday at 2 PM CST. I'll see you guys in the next week. Take care.